The dish pit stank of old shrimp shells, lemon rinds, and beer foam. It was loud, not just with plates clanging, but with voices that didn't bother to lower themselves when speaking about him. "Hey, Speedy, you miss a spot," one of the line cooks barked, tossing a greasy sauté pan onto the stack like it wasn't hot enough to scald. The boy flinched, but said nothing. He wore a navy apron soaked to the waist and yellow gloves cracked from bleach. Every now and then, he'd glance through the fogged glass swinging doors where the real action was, where fire met steel, where orders were yelled in English and Spanish and sometimes French, though none of it sounded like his grandmother's tongue. His name was Tomás, though no one used it. He was 17, undocumented, and invisible. He came in before sunrise to mop the kitchen floors and stayed until the last wine glass was polished. His shift was technically 10 hours, but technically didn't mean anything in that kitchen. The executive chef, Nolan, ran the place like a shipwrecked pirate vessel. Chaotic, brilliant, and mean, he wore a man bun and carried a chef's knife like a conductor's baton. When he wasn't shouting about foam textures or mouthfeel, he was slapping trays off counters and swearing someone else was sabotaging his career. Tomás kept his head down. He didn't have papers. He didn't have a voice. But he had a secret. Every night after the last tray was stacked and the kitchen emptied into the bar down the block, Tomás lingered. He unlocked the prep fridge with a spoon. He bent just right, pulled out whatever scraps were left from the shift, shallots, half a duck breast, a bruised mango, and he cooked. He cooked like his abuela had taught him, barefoot in the soft, clay kitchen of their village in Totonicapán, Guatemala. No timers, no measurements, just memory, just scent. He never plated anything in the standard white dishes they used. He found a cracked black bowl behind the dry goods rack, wiped it with lime, and called it his own. Sometimes he left what he made for the line cooks to accidentally discover in the morning. He never signed it, never even hinted it was his. But every now and then he'd hear, "Yo, who made that tamarind glaze last night? Somebody knows what they're doing back here." Still, it didn't matter. He wasn't allowed to touch the food. That had been made very clear when Chef Nolan caught him mincing cilantro one night and threw the whole cutting board in the trash. "You're here to clean," he spat, "not pretend." But Tomás kept cooking in the shadows, because in those brief, quiet moments he remembered who he was. He wasn't some border ghost or mop boy. He was the grandson of women who ground maize on stone and stirred life into pots of caldo like it was gospel. The shift before it all changed started like any other. Friday night, fully booked, Chef Nolan in rare form, pacing the kitchen like a soldier on amphetamines. "New York Times reviewers coming tonight," he barked. "So nobody, when I mean nobody, gets creative. You follow the menu, period." Tomás nodded, even though the command wasn't for him. He wasn't even supposed to be listening. At 7:03 p.m. the VIP reservation arrived. The critic was seated at table 6, the one with the golden sconce and sound-dampening panels. Chef Nolan personally fire-salted the ribeye with his signature pinch. The plates went out like sacred offerings. At 7:18 the plate came back, half-eaten. A polite note scrawled on the receipt. Uninspired, lacking soul. The kitchen fell into a hush. Nolan read the words like they'd personally insulted his bloodline. Then he turned, slowly, and hurled the cast-iron pan at the prep station. "That's it. We're done for the year. This kitchen's a joke." The line cooks froze. Servers pretended not to hear. Tomás just watched. His heart thudded. Not with pity, but with a strange swelling urge, like hunger, but deeper. Her need to be seen, to offer something real. He didn't know yet. But this was the night the menu would be rewritten, and it would begin in the only language that mattered: flavor. The kitchen felt like a war zone. Not in the metaphorical way kitchens always do, but in that low, suffocating pressure like the air had turned to ash. Orders still came through the printer, beeping every few seconds, but nobody moved to grab them. Chef Nolan had retreated to the office, the metal door thudding shut like the slamming of a cell. No one dared follow. It was only 7:30. Tomás stood by the sink, unmoving. The dishes kept piling into the pit, clattering onto steel, some with half-eaten foie gras, others with untouched squash puree. But he didn't see any of that. All he saw was the broken rhythm. The disorder, the kind of opening that never came twice. Across the line, the sous chef Devin was trying to fake calm, calling out orders to no one in particular. 2 duck confit, 1 halibut, walking in. Nobody responded. Tomás did, not with words, not with permission, but with movement. He peeled off his gloves, quietly, deliberately, set them aside like a priest folding cloth at an altar. He wiped his hands dry and walked toward the prep fridge, each step like stepping out from a fog. He didn't ask, didn't wait. No one noticed at first, and that was his advantage. The new orders were waiting. The ticket said, halibut squash gremolata. But Tomás didn't go for the squash. He reached into the walk-in for chipolline, a green leaf used in his village, smuggled in small bags by the older kitchen porter on weekends, hidden among cilantro and mint. He mixed it with citrus zest, shallots and garlic, crushing it with the side of his knife, not a processor. He plated it with thin sliced grilled plantain underneath the halibut, and on top, a single swirl of mango habanero glaze, tempered, with lime so it kissed the tongue, not scorched it. The whole plate took under 6 minutes. The server, Kenny, only glanced up once. Where's Nolan? Tomás didn't answer. He just slid the plate onto the pass. Kenny frowned. Chef's not gonna. I'll take the hit, said Devin from across the line, sweat shining through his headband. Just get it out. Kenny grabbed the dish and vanished. Table 6 sat in the corner, candlelight flickering against the polished brass of a phone screen. The critic was older, her silver hair pulled into a clean knot. She didn't look up as the plate was delivered, didn't smile, didn't speak. She cut once, tasted, then stopped moving entirely. Her eyebrows didn't lift, her lips didn't part. But her eyes, they lingered on the plate longer than they had all night. Tomás couldn't see any of this. He was back behind the line now, silent again, scrubbing a cutting board clean like it was just another Friday. But Devin saw it, and so did Kenny. So did Nolan, who finally emerged at 8:04 p.m., eyes bloodshot, shoulders squared like a boxer who'd lost in round 1 and was still trying to fake confidence. What's on 6? He barked. Devin didn't blink. Halibut. With? Devin paused. New garnish. Slight riff. Nolan narrowed his eyes. He grabbed a spoon and dipped it into the leftover glaze. He froze. He knew. This isn't mine, he muttered. No one answered. He looked around, the way a lion might scan for the weakest animal, only this time he didn't see weakness. He saw Tomás, standing by the sink, eyes steady. Don't fear, just calm. You made that plate? Tomás didn't nod. He didn't smile. He just kept cleaning like nothing had happened. The printer chirped again, and this time the whole kitchen turned. 3 more orders, all from table 6. Same, as before. No substitutions, no changes, no notes, just trust. Devin grinned. Kenny whistled low. Nolan said nothing. Not a word. But Tomás saw it. The shift had begun, not just in the kitchen, but in the story they were all a part of. And for the first time in this city, in this steel jungle of insult and labor, his food had spoken for him. It wasn't loud, but it was undeniable, and it had only just begun. The kitchen stayed quiet too long. Not the good kind of quiet, not the rhythm of a crew in sync, not the reverent hush after a successful rush, but the loaded, electric stillness of a room waiting for something to break. Nolan stood at the edge of the pass, arms crossed, watching the ticket rail fill with a strange phrase he hadn't seen in months. Chef's choice, same halibut. Repeat whatever that last dish was. Guest 3 requests same flavor profile. And then, in messier handwriting, from the server who just delivered to table 6, critic wants to meet the chef, not Nolan, the other one. That line hit harder than any review ever had. Nolan's jaw twitched. He turned slowly, scanning the kitchen. The line cooks kept chopping. Devin was suddenly very focused on a carrot. And Tomás. Tomás was still wiping down his prep space like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just shifted the gravitational pull of the whole restaurant. Nolan walked over. His voice was low. "Who told you to step onto the line?" Tomás didn't flinch. "No one." "So you just—" "What? Thought it'd be fun to sabotage my kitchen during a critic's visit?" Devin dropped his knife with a clang. "Chef—" "Shut up, Devin. You've been skating since January." Tomás said nothing. He didn't need to, because just then Kenny pushed back through the doors out of breath, white napkin stuffed in his apron pocket. "Yo, table 6 wants the chef now. Not you." He looked at Tomás. "She pointed straight at you, man. You gotta come out." The whole kitchen paused again. All eyes turned. Tomás glanced at Nolan, then at Devin, who gave the faintest, almost imperceptible nod. Then he walked, past the sinks, past the line, through the doors, out into the dining room. The critic sat with her napkin folded, fingers interlaced on the linen. She looked up with the kind of gaze that didn't miss much, sharp, tired, elegant. "You're the one who made the halibut?" she asked. Tomás nodded once. Her eyes studied him. Not his clothes, not the calluses on his hands, but the steadiness, the silence that followed. "What's your name?" "Tomás," he said softly. His accent made the words sing, rounder and slower than the clipped names she'd heard all night. "Where are you from?" "Guatemala." "Where'd you train?" He hesitated. "Nowhere." The critic smiled. "No," she said. "I don't believe that." Tomás didn't smile back, but something moved behind his eyes. A flicker of grief, maybe. "A memory. My grandmother," he said. "She trained me." The woman blinked. "Well, then she trained you very, very well." She unfolded her napkin, dabbed her lips, and leaned back in her chair. "I've eaten at 6 restaurants this week, all Michelin hopefuls, all run by men who want to be seen. What you made, that dish wasn't desperate, it was honest, and brave, and rare." She slid a card across the table. "If I write about this, I want to get your name right." Tomás didn't move. The card sat there like a lit match. He could feel every eye on him. Servers, bussers, the barback polishing glasses near the register. He didn't take the card. Not yet. Instead, he said, "It wasn't just me. Devin helped. And the others. The team." The critic tilted her head. "And Nolan?" Tomás didn't lie. But he didn't speak. That was answer enough. Back in the kitchen, Nolan was pacing like a man whose crown had been knocked sideways. Kenny relayed. Everything. The conversation, the card, the smile. He tried to soften it, but there was no way to spin it. The critic had asked for Tomás, not for the man whose name was on the menu. Nolan's voice cracked the air like a bone-breaking, "I want him off the premises," Devin stepped in. "Chef, don't—" "No, he's undocumented. He's a liability. You think insurance is going to cover a dishwasher who rewrites the menu without clearance? Chef, he just saved the night. Then he can save it somewhere else." Tomás had just walked through the doors when the words hit, And for the first time since he arrived in this city, he spoke first. "You want me gone," he said quietly, "because someone finally saw me." Nolan whirled. "I want you gone because this is a business, and you don't belong in my kitchen." Tomás stepped forward, voice steady now. "Then maybe it's not your kitchen anymore." The room went still again, and Devon, shaking just a little, turned off his burner and said, "He's right." One by one the line cooks followed. Click, 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 gas burners off, and silence, the kind that comes right before a storm. Nolan's breath hitched. The hiss of burners shutting off echoed louder than any raised voice. Devon was already peeling off his apron. The others followed one by one. Dish rags tossed gently on stainless counters, chef coats unbuttoned in quiet defiance. The entire kitchen, Nolan's kingdom, was walking out. Even Kenny, the server, lingered near the door with his order pad still in his back pocket. No one said anything dramatic. There was no shouting, no chairs thrown, no dishes smashed for effect. Just silence. That's what made it sting the most. "Fine," Nolan snapped, voice cracking through the hush. "Let them walk, all of them. I built this place. I made this. Fenu. Not some undocumented kid with mango sauce and a sympathy vote." Tomás didn't react. He just took off his apron, folded it, and laid it on the prep counter. He didn't need to argue. The room had already answered. He turned to Devon. "Come?" Devon gave him a half-smile. "Thought you'd never ask." And just like that, the kitchen emptied. Outside, the late evening had broken into drizzle. The city smelled of pavement and ozone and distant cigarettes. Tomás stepped out beneath the rusted fire escape where they took smoke breaks, his breath visible in the cool air. The others stood nearby, unsure whether they had just burned a bridge or finally lit the fuse they'd all been sitting on. No one really spoke until they turned the corner. It was Devon who broke the silence. "You know he'll try to spin it. Tell the investors we walked out because we're lazy. Say you poisoned the fish or some other—" "I don't care," Tomás said. And he meant it. He was no longer afraid. No longer hoping to be noticed by someone who built walls to keep people like him out. The article dropped the next morning. It wasn't on page 4 or buried under local politics. It was the lead food feature in the New York Times Metro section, titled, "The Dish That Changed the Conversation." Below it, a photograph of the halibut plate. No overstyled garnish, no microgreens for flair. Just the mango glaze, the plantain, and a bold headline that dared the reader to question what mattered more, a pedigree or a palate, and midway through the column in sharp, unmissable print, I asked for the chef. I was told his name is Tomás, a 17-year-old undocumented dishwasher who was not supposed to be anywhere near the line. What he brought to my table wasn't just flavor, it was courage. This was not a menu item. This was a memory, plated, the only food that spoke. Tomás didn't have a subscription to the Times, but Devon did. He brought the paper, creased and already coffee-stained, to the diner where they'd been meeting the past few mornings. A little Dominican spot, where no one asked questions, and the music was always 2 notches too loud. Tomás read the words twice, then again, and when he looked up, his hands were trembling. "Hey," Devon said. "Hey, it's happening, man. People are talking. Look." He slid his phone across the table. 4 different chefs already reposted the article. Someone even asked if they can tag you. "I don't have social." "Don't worry," Devon grinned. "You will." Then he paused. "There's more." He pulled up an email on his phone and turned the screen. Subject: "Let's Talk Kitchen Space" from Daniel Suarez, founder, Comida Reclaimed. The message was short, but it hit like thunder. "Tomás," read the article, "we need to meet. We offer mentorship and shared kitchens for immigrant chefs with talent. Full sponsorship, no strings. We think your story is just getting started." Tomás stared at the screen. His voice was quiet. "I never thought—" "You didn't need to," Devon said. You cooked like you remembered who you were. The rest, that's what we're gonna build now." Later that night, Tomás stood in front of the locked doors of his old kitchen. The windows were dark. Inside, only one light flickered in the back office. Nolan was still there, alone. Tomás didn't knock, didn't try to get the last word. He just looked at the place one last time and walked on. Not because he'd lost anything, but because for the first time in America, he had somewhere else to go. The address was handwritten on a yellow sticky note, folded twice and tucked into the back of Tomás's wallet, like it might disappear if he looked at it too long. It was in the Bronx, a quiet block near a shuttered train yard, where the skyline gave way to low warehouses and old bodegas still flying faded flags from 3 countries. Tomás stepped off the bus just past noon. It was Saturday, and the sky had that spring-stained grey New York wore before it decided whether it wanted to be warm yet. He clutched the envelope with the New York Times clipping inside, the one Devin had folded and taped for him, and walked with the kind of careful hope reserved for people used to disappointment. He turned the corner and found the building. Comida Reclaimed, a shared kitchen initiative. The front door was propped open with a 5-gallon bucket of onions. Inside, the air was thick with cumin and roasted peppers, and something nutty that smelled like home even though he couldn't place it. The lobby wasn't much, a converted loading bay, floors scrubbed clean, but still scarred with pallet grooves. A mural stretched across the main wall, a line of hands reaching across a counter, brown, black, wrinkled, inked, passing spices, ladles, tortillas, bread. At the bottom of the mural, the words, "Flavor has no border." Tomás stood, still until a woman in a navy apron waved him in. She looked to be in her 50s, tall with silver streaks in her hair and a calm sharpness in her eyes. "You must be Tomás," she said. "Daniel told me you'd come." He nodded, too nervous to speak. She reached out her hand. "I'm Raina. I run the kitchen." She didn't ask for papers. She didn't check a clipboard. She just handed him a white apron and pointed toward the back. "Come, I saved you a station." The kitchen was different from the restaurant. No yelling, no chaos, just a low hum of collaboration. 4 chefs at separate stations, each working, on their own dishes like musicians playing variations on the same song. A man in his 60s was shaping dumplings by hand, humming a tune in Mandarin. Beside him, a young woman sprinkled cardamom into thick rice pudding. Across the room, 2 brothers grilled corn over open flame, then brushed it with butter and crushed red pepper. Raina led Tomás to a stainless steel counter by the window. "This is yours." No clocks, no menu, no chef shouting in your face. Tomás ran his hand over the surface, still warm from morning prep. It was scratched, imperfect, but it felt like possibility. "Cook something," Raina said, turning away. "Anything you want. No one's watching, but I'll know if it's real." He stood there for a while, not because he didn't know what to make, but because he knew too many things. His brain flashed through every memory of food that had comforted, healed, or told a story without words. Finally, he moved. He reached for the ingredients with care, some from the pantry, others he had brought with him in a canvas bag. Fresh. Corn, cottage cheese, chiltepe chilies, a single avocado, soft tamarind pulp. From the spice rack he chose clove and smoked paprika. He started with tamales de elote, the way his mother used to make them when the rainy season came early. Sweet, corn folded with masa, just enough salt to wake the flavor. But then he added something new, a smear of smoked avocado lime creamer under each one, a dusting of cotija and crushed chiltepe on top. When they were done, he plated 2, one for tasting, one for respect. He walked it over to Raina, who was now chopping onions beside the woman making cardamom pudding. She didn't say anything, just looked. Took a bite. Chewed, closed her eyes and smiled. "Real," she said. Then she turned to the others. "Hey everybody, we got a new dish for lunch." The whole room clapped, soft and warm, like they already knew he belonged. After clean-up, Raina pulled him aside. "You cooked from memory," she said. "Most people spend years unlearning ego to get back there, but you're already there." He didn't know what to say. She leaned against the counter. "Daniel will want to talk next week. He helps fund pop-up programs, taste showcases. There's an event next month. You interested in putting your name on something real?" Tomás hesitated. "My name?" he said, unsure. "People don't want—" Raina interrupted. "People don't know what they want until someone puts it on a plate." She handed him a blank notebook. "For your ideas," she said, "and your story. Someday, someone's going to ask how it all started." Tomás ran his fingers across the cover. This wasn't a job. This was a beginning, and this time his name would be on the menu. The first flyer was printed in black ink on soft recycled paper. Nothing flashy, just the Comida reclaimed logo at the top, a time and date, and beneath it in clean serif font, Tomás Guzmán presents From Memory, a pop-up tasting of Guatemalan-inspired flavors, May 18th, 6 p.m., shared kitchen, 3 Tomás. Had stared at the final draft for almost 10 minutes before nodding. Devin had added the subtitle, From Memory, after reading through a few of Tomás's scribbled recipe notes. "You keep writing that," Devin had said, thumbing through the notebook Raina gave him. "Every dish starts the same way. I remember when—" "That's your whole thing, man. That's your brand." Tomás hadn't thought of himself as a brand. He barely thought of himself as a person some days. Not when he still had to move through the city like a whisper, keeping his head down when the subway cops showed up or a neighbor started asking too many questions. But something was changing, and it was bigger than fear. The week before the pop-up, he barely slept. Raina let him use the kitchen after hours. She even brought in a friend from El Salvador to help him source better corn, and a Dominican vendor who had the good plantains, the ones that blackened just right without going soft inside. Every dish he designed had a memory sewn inside it. There was the black bean tostada, with fire-roasted tomato and queso fresco, like the one his sister used to sell near the school gates. A green mango and lime chile sorbet, like what he used to beg for during the dry season, eating it from paper cones. And, of course, his signature, the grilled halibut on plantain crisps with mango habanero glaze. He adjusted the acid this time. Less lime, more tamarind. "Your tongue's maturing," Raina said with a smile. "You're building depth now." Tomás nodded. But deep down, he knew what it really was. He was starting to believe he deserved the taste. By the night of the event, the kitchen smelled like corn and sweet smoke and quiet anxiety. Folding tables were covered in white linen. Reclaimed wood counters held ceramic bowls from a local artist who donated them for a good cause. Guests started arriving just before 6. The space wasn't huge, but by 6:15 it was packed. A mix of local foodies, streetwear bloggers, restaurant scouts, and a few older women from the neighborhood who came just for the spice. Daniel Suarez arrived at 6:30, short, sharp-eyed, with silver rings and a voice like a TED Talk waiting to happen. He shook Tomás's hand hard and said, "Make them remember you, not just your food." Tomás nodded. He plated every dish by hand. Raina and Devin worked beside him, silent, efficient, like they'd done this 100 times. A small speaker played soft marimba and old boleros in the background, and people began to eat. No one spoke much at first. Then came the murmurs, the kind that ripple across a room when something unexpected hits the tongue. Not just flavor, but story. Recognition. 7:05. The critic from New York Times had posted a photo on her Instagram with the caption, "He didn't vanish. He's just getting started." From memory, by 7:20, there was a line outside, and at 7:34, a man stepped into the room wearing a leather jacket and a look that didn't belong. Chef Nolan, Tomás, saw him immediately. He was near the back, pretending to study the decor, eyes skimming the room like he was scouting a threat. He hadn't shaved. His eyes were red-rimmed, tired, maybe angry, Rayner noticed. So did Devin. "You want me to walk him out?" Devin asked under his breath. "No," Tomás said. He kept plating. Nolan stepped closer, picked up one of the tasting bowls from a passing tray, ate it right there without a fork, just fingers and spite. He chewed once, twice, then tossed the rest in the trash can beside the service table. Tomás didn't say a word, but his hand, holding the next plate, didn't shake. Nolan lingered a second longer, waiting for a reaction, waiting for shame, waiting for proof that none of this was real. He didn't get it because Rayner stepped forward, calm and clear, and said, "Guests are here to taste, not to interrupt. Please leave." For a second, Nolan didn't move. Then he did. He walked out, the same way he came, unnoticed by most except the ones who knew where the story started. That night, after the crowd thinned and the lights dimmed, Rayner handed Tomás a manila envelope. "What's this?" He opened it slowly. Inside, a formal invitation. "You are selected to showcase at the City Roots Food Expo, featuring immigrant chefs, original street cuisine and culinary storytelling." His slot, closing night, next to his name, in clean, bold font, Tomás Guzmán, founder from Memory NYC. Tomás held the paper in his hands for a long time, not just because of what it meant, but because no one else had put that word beside his name before. Founder. The venue was nothing like the shared kitchen, where comida reclaimed smelled like masa and cumin and warmth. The City Roots Food Expo felt like polished concrete and curated playlists. It took place in a reclaimed warehouse in Brooklyn, once a sugar refinery, now a sanctuary of exposed beams, Edison bulbs, and pop-up food gods. Tomás stood at booth 19 under a hanging sign that read, "From Memory NYC, Tomás Guzmán, Guatemalan Roots, Reimagined." Devin was running the back prep, his sleeves rolled high, hair under a branded cap. Rayner stood off to the side, arms folded like a coach, watching her best player step onto the court. She hadn't said much all day, but that was her way. Tomás adjusted the heat on the burner. This was it, the Expo's final tasting slot. Closing. Night. His night. There were two featured dishes. Both had evolved since the pop-up. The first, smoked turkey pepián tamal, wrapped in banana leaf and laced with clove-heavy red sauce, a nod to his grandmother's village festival dish, only, plated with purple pickled onions and tiny pressed herb flowers, he foraged near Queens. The second, fire-grilled corn tostada, slathered with garlic lime aioli, topped with charred black beans, pickled mango and a dusting of spiced cacao ash. The line grew fast. Influencers with DSLR cameras, retired food critics, Gen Z foodies in puffer vests, an Ecuadorian chef from the Bronx who whispered, "This tastes like my aunt's kitchen and a revolution." And then someone stepped up who stopped Tomás mid-motion. Not Nolan, not ice, not press. It was a woman. Brown hands, thin wrists, dark eyes that had weathered things. "Tomás," she said softly, in the Spanish he hadn't heard from family. "In 2 years, mi amorcito, mijo." He dropped the tongs. His mother stood in front of him, tears spilling without sound. She looked smaller, paler, but alive. Whole. Rayner stepped back, as if giving space to a holy moment. Tomás stumbled around the booth, nearly knocking the warming tray. "Como?" he whispered. "Como estás aquí?" "I've been here." 3 weeks, she said, clutching him, whispering fast. "Your uncle got me a sponsor. I've been trying to find you. Your sister saw the article online. She printed it and hung it by the church." He didn't cry. Not then. He just held her until the noise of the room faded into a dull ocean. Until the expo coordinator tapped Raina lightly and said, "He's up." The main stage was a simple platform framed in strings of lights. There was no microphone, just a long wooden table, a camera crew, and an audience of 200 people seated in folding chairs and anticipation. Daniel Suarez stepped to the front. "This," he said, "is what it looks like when borders fail, but flavor crosses anyway. Please welcome, not a chef, not a cook, but a memory keeper, Mr. Tomás Guzmán." The applause was thunder. Tomás walked out, hands slightly damp, voice trapped in his chest. He looked out at them, at strangers who knew him only through taste, at Raina in the corner, at Devon behind the table, at his mother, still wiping her face with a napkin she had folded too many times. Then he spoke. "I came to this country with recipes, not resumes." A ripple moved through the crowd. "I worked in silence, in dish pits, in kitchens that called me ghost or hey you. I wasn't supposed to plate food, I wasn't supposed to speak." He held up the tamal. "But memory doesn't ask permission." He passed a plate to the first row. "This is my grandmother's festival tamal, but reimagined, because even when you leave home it doesn't leave you." Then the tostada. "This is my mother's corn, my sister's pickled mango, my own fire." They closed their eyes, some whispered, some clapped softly, some wept. And for the first time in the city, in this country of noise and rush and forgetting, Tomás was not invisible. He was the story. He was the closing act. He was the name on the tongue. 2 weeks passed like a dream he didn't want to wake from. The City Roots Expo went viral. Food blogs ran headlines like, "The dishwasher who fed the city's soul." "Flavor with a memory. Tomás Guzmán rewrites NYC cuisine," podcasters called. A local PBS affiliate asked to film a short documentary. Raina handled the filtering. She'd seen too many bright sparks burn out in the whirlwind of internet fame. Tomás stayed grounded. He came in early to prep stock like always, cleaned his own station, wrote notes in the margin of his recipe book. But every day more people showed up to see him, not just for the food but for what he represented. A different kind of American dream, one with spice, with roots, with scars. And then came the envelope, delivered by hand. Heavy, cream-colored. Embossed with the gold seal of the Glass Orchid, a Michelin-starred restaurant in Manhattan's theater district. Inside, a letter on thick stationery. "Dear Mr. Guzmán, we were deeply moved by your work at the City Roots Expo. Your dishes do what few can. They narrate without words. We would be honored to offer you a full partnership and executive chef title for our next concept. Origin. A fine dining restaurant featuring cuisine born from immigrant journeys. Build the menu, lead the team. We'll handle the rest. Sincerely, Louis Fairmont, owner. The Glass Orchid Group." He read it 3 times, then left it on the prep counter and went back to roasting poblanos. Raina didn't ask. She didn't need to. But later, as they were closing up, she said, "It's a beautiful offer." He nodded. "I'm proud of you," she added. "I'm proud of us," he replied. And he meant it. That weekend, he took the subway alone. Not to Midtown, not to a meeting, but back to the street in the Bronx where he'd first walked into Comida Reclaimed. The mural on the wall was bigger now. Someone had added him to it, painting his face, his apron, a plate of tamales in his hands. Underneath, a new quote had been added, "Flavor remembers what borders forget." He stared at it for a long time, then pulled a key from his pocket. It was still warm from the copy machine. 6 months later, the new kitchen wasn't fancy, but it had space. open light, an herb garden on the rooftop, a station built lower so Raina could chop without straining her shoulder, a window for walk-ups, a chalkboard menu that changed weekly, and above the door, from memory NYC chef owner, Tomás Guzmán on. Opening day, a little boy came up to the counter with his mother. He was maybe 8, dark eyes, shy. He pointed at the halibut tostada and whispered, "Is that the one the newspaper talked about?" Tomás leaned forward. "Better," he said with a grin. "This one's got your name in the seasoning." The boy beamed. And in that moment, Tomás knew. He could have gone to Midtown, could have had the white tablecloth, the sommeliers, the tasting menus with 7 forks. But that wasn't his story. This was not just food on a plate, but family, fire, home, memory, and above all, his name on the door.